Hey everyone, it's Armor Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is a light legendary monster known as Taiga. This experienced hunter uses weapons to kill more effectively, but he can get the job done with his bare claws. In spite of his strength and abilities, he only hunts to survive and feed his family. Taiga's heart is filled with kindness. Taiga was a monster introduced in the 2016-2017 Winter Maze Island, and I gotta say, design wise he has one of the best. He's such a great looking monster. Design wise he looks like an attacker, and let's see if the stats verify that. But before I jump into stats, I have to say that there are currently 19 light legendary monsters, which you can see before you. So in this analysis, I'm comparing Taiga with the rest of them. So Taiga has a power of 3,498, which is actually the highest power for light legendary monsters, and currently the only other light legendary monster to have this power would be Lathe, another great attacker. His life, however, 25,032, that is rather low, and I mean rather low. This actually puts him second from the bottom, so this would put him in 18th place. Not a really good life to have. However, you can make the argument that it doesn't matter that his life is rather low because this monster is an attacker, and realistically, all an attacker needs to do is have a really high power, some strong damage skills, and a decent enough speed to get an attack in. But with Taiga specifically, you're going to find that he has some skills that actually protect him from taking damage, so regardless that his life is rather low, it's still okay. And lastly, he has a speed of 3,432, which is a pretty good speed. This actually puts him in 8th place. So certainly not the highest, it's certainly not the lowest, and like I said, he's an attacker. His speed doesn't matter too much. All that matters is that his speed isn't too low to the point where he isn't really usable. And as for his trait, Taiga is immune to freeze, thus making him the first light legendary monster to actually be immune to this. So having a light monster immune to freeze, this is really significant, because now in Team Wars involving light monsters and water monsters, you're gonna have a usable light monster that isn't gonna be immobilized on the first turn, especially if the enemy is faster than you. Now of course, if the enemy has a general Thetis, there's really no counter to that. In a Team War involving dark and light, you'll see a lot of people using Krampus to defend, because Krampus has an AoE freeze and he's incredibly fast. So now that you have Taiga, even if that Krampus goes first and starts off with its AoE freeze, you're gonna be good, your attacker is gonna be safe, and next turn he can just wipe out an enemy in one hit. I said this in another video about Social Point starting to introduce monsters that have traits not concerned with their own element, and I think it's a really good idea. I think slowly and surely it's going to start changing the meta up a bit. We're not going to rely on a monster with an AoE freeze or an AoE possession, because now regardless of which monsters we have to choose for Team Wars, we're going to start to see that a lot of them are going to have immunities to something that's not their own element. For example, Taiga being immune to freeze, Brynhilde being immune to possession, Aran also being immune to possession, Hercule, a metal monster, being immune to freeze. We're just starting to get all these monsters with traits that work against other elements, and that's pretty cool. It's going to change the game up a bit. Maybe not right away, but pretty soon I think it will be making a change, and I think that's going to push certain deny monsters in competition to being the best deny monster. So for now, we're just going to have to wait and see. Of course, keep in mind that Taiga is a light monster, and when you go up against other light monsters, they tend to have a lot of blind skills and day skills, which can really impact Taiga, because as an attacker you have to be able to land the hits, but I don't really think that's too much of a concern. As long as you have a deny monster and you can successfully immobilize the enemy monsters from either immobilizing Taiga or from blinding him or dazing him, then you're going to be good. Also, Taiga does have a few skills that can help him get rid of those negative effects. So as for Taiga having his immune to freeze trait, that is awesome. Anyways, let's talk about skills now. We have Taiga Strike, Taiga Trap, nothing too interesting here. Let's move on to his special, the Knight of the Hunter. Deals insane special damage to all enemies. Wow, this is a pretty straightforward skill. It deals 80 damage, it's an AoE, so that attacks all enemies, and it's special based. What more can you ask for? Yeah, this skill doesn't deal any extra effect, but really you don't need it. Again, this monster is an attacker. You can pretty much imagine that when you give this monster strength runes, given his power, given the damage output on this skill, that's gonna wipe out the whole enemy team, no questions asked. Definitely a fantastic skill, definitely fitting of an attacker. In skills group 1, we have Hidden Hunt, Restoring Tongue, Multi-Trap. There's nothing too particularly interesting about these skills. Hidden Hunt is Taiga's only spammable skill, but the damage output on this, 35, I don't think it's worth running. Restoring Tongue heals Taiga's life by 25%, as well as gives him precision. This skill can arguably be pretty good. In situations where you go up against monsters that can possess, you know, magic monsters or some dark monsters, running a skill like Restoring Tongue can really benefit you. If you were to actually get possessed, you could just use Restoring Tongue, recover 1/4 of your life, and give you increased accuracy, which can help you set up for the next attack. You wouldn't have to attack a teammate, and you wouldn't waste a turn recharging. And also consider the fact that going up against other light monsters, there's a really high chance they're going to be able to blind you. If you did happen to get blinded, you would just be able to use Restoring Tongue, and that precision would clear away the blind. And then we have Multi-Trap, but this skill isn't even worth mentioning. So onwards to skills group 2. Hidden Kill deals massive special damage, may make target bleed, requires cooldown. This skill targets a single enemy, dealing 70 damage, costing 31 stamina, having a 2-turn cooldown. Aside from being a really powerful skill that can pretty much wipe out any enemy that isn't really tanky or has life runes, this skill will also give the enemy monster you target bleeding, and bleeding reduces the enemy's life by 10% for the following 4 turns, and also reduces their power by about 1/5, which is a little nice extra bonus. Like I said, the only monsters that should be surviving Hidden Kill would be monsters with life runes or monsters that are really tanky, so even if they do manage to survive, that bleeding is just going to cut away 1/10 of their life every single turn for the next 4 turns. This is a really great skill, and it's definitely a must have for Taiga. Next we have Lick Your Wounds. Gains precision, removes all negative status effects from itself, requires cooldown. So this is a self skill that costs 28 stamina, has a 3-turn cooldown, cooldown, and the cooldown to me seems a little bit too high, especially when all you're doing is giving yourself increased accuracy and removing debuffs. Now once again, considering that for sure you're going to be facing against light monsters tend to blind and daze. Well, regardless of what negative effect you have, the removing their own debuffs can help. So for that reason, this skill can definitely come in handy. But when you think about how a game goes, let's say the enemy monster was to blind you, and then with your Taiga you use Lick Your Wounds to get rid of that blind. On the following turn, there's a high chance the enemy light monster can daze you, in which case you're still going to have a negative effect for the next 2 turns. Yeah, you may not be blinded, but you're still going to be dazed. So you can argue how good this skill actually is. Still, it can certainly be usable in multiple situations. For instance, if you're possessed, or if you have some damage over time effect on you, like burning, bleed, poison, whatever DLT you have on you. So you have to decide for yourself whether this skill is worth running or not. Next, we have Fatal Ambush. Deals moderate light damage to all enemies, requires cooldown. We have a light based AoE that deals 45 damage to all of the enemy monsters, 36 stamina, 3 turn cooldown. So we have ourselves a pretty straightforward skills. Of course, I would have preferred if it was special based instead of light based, but it is what it is, no use complaining there. Using the skill against another light monster, it most likely won't be killing them unless you have some really high level runes and you have some sort of buff. But in Team Wars, considering you'll be facing a rarity, a light, and some other element, you'll at least be able to deal some significant damage on that other element. And for the rarity, assuming it's rare or below and they're not ranked up, you're most likely going to be taking them out with Fatal Ambush. So this is a skill you might want to consider running. And on to skills group 3, we have Invisible Hunter. Deals heavy special damage. Taiga will dodge the first attack received within the next round. Requires cooldown. This is a special based skill that targets a single enemy, deals 50 damage, costs 28 stamina, and has a 2 turn cooldown. And this is where it gets good. This skill gives Taiga space time. Space time, I imagine most people are familiar with this from Timerion. You basically won't take any damage whatsoever on the following turn. And I mean any single damage, whether the enemy monsters attack you, whether you have a DOT like bleeding on you, or even if you have a monster like Nox the Condemned, who has a skill that targets all monsters, both the enemy monsters and your own monsters. If you have space time, you won't take any damage. But just because you don't take any damage, that doesn't mean you're immune to getting hit by negative effects. Even with space time on, you're still susceptible to getting possessed, to getting burned or poisoned, to being inflicted with nightmares. Negative effects can still land on you. You just won't receive any damage for that first initial turn. So because this skill is special based, it deals 50 damage and it gives you space time, I think it's definitely a skill worth running, especially when you consider the fact that this is really Taiga's only other single target hit, at least if you're not counting the one from skills group 1, which is the spammable 35 damage skill. Gains double damage. Taiga will dodge the first attack received within the next turn, gains position, requires cooldown. Another self skill, costs 31 stamina, 3 turn cooldown, and this skill is pretty darn amazing. It's like the ultimate self buff skill. What more can you ask for? You get your double damage, you get your increased accuracy, that's good enough already. But Taiga also gives himself space time, so now he's going to be ignoring whatever damage he receives on the next turn. So like a few other skills, Ready to Hunt can come in handy in multiple situations. If the enemy light monster goes first and blinds you, it doesn't matter. You use Ready to Hunt, you get your increased accuracy, you get your double damage, you've just set up for the next attack. If you're in a situation where your Taiga got possessed, instead of wasting the turn recharging, you can just use Ready to Hunt, which will help you set up for your next attack. And just check this out, the fact that Taiga can do Ready to Hunt and give himself space time and follow it up with Invisible Hunter and do space time again, that is 2 full turns that he can't take any damage. So yeah, even though he doesn't have the highest life for light legendary monsters, it's fine because he can ignore damage for at least 2 whole turns. I would say Ready to Hunt is another must-have skill. And lastly, we have another AoE, Deadly Artifice. Deals low light damage to all enemies, may make all targets bleed, requires cooldown. This skill is a light-based AoE that deals 30 damage to all of the enemy monsters, it costs 35 stamina, it has a 3 turn cooldown, and it gives everyone bleeding. Now there are quite a few benefits to having an AoE bleeding skill. The 2 main benefits are that 1, no monster is currently immune to bleeding, and 2, all of the enemy's damage output is going to be reduced by 1/5. And when the enemies have reduced damage output, that can help your monster stay alive. So in Team Wars, this can help Taiga stay alive, or this can help your rarity monster stay alive. So for Deadly Artifice, it's up to you whether or not you want to run this skill. So there's a few potential skill sets I can actually see working out for Taiga, some better than others, the first of which is to run both AoEs, Fatal Ambush and Deadly Artifice. Now if even one of these skills would have been special based, I think the skill set could have worked a whole lot better, but honestly running both AoE skills, depending on the kind of runes you give Taiga, that could certainly be enough to wipe out the enemy team, maybe even the light legendary monster. Aside from running both of the AoE skills, you would also want to run Ready to Hunt because it gives you that double damage, that increased accuracy, and space time, which will help you out, and you would also want to run Invisible Hunter, once again because of space time, and also because after you do either AoE, whether it's Deadly Artifice or Fatal Ambush, Invisible Hunter might be all you need to take out one enemy monster guaranteed. So I'm really not a fan of that skill set, but nonetheless it is a feasible skill set. The skill set I'm more fond of, and the skill set I recommend to most people, would be to run Ready to Hunt, Invisible Hunter, Hit and Kill, and then the fourth and final skill really comes down to preference. Are you the kind of person that likes to play it safe and have a skill that can help you out in particular situations? If so, Lick Your Wounds might be the skill for you. Are you the kind of person that's just after raw damage output, in which case Fatal Ambush would be the skill for you? Or are you the kind of person that likes to run an AoE skill that can give bleeding to the enemy monsters which no one is immune to? In my opinion, the last skill really comes down to preference, because even like I mentioned very early on, even Restoring Time can be a feasible skill set. The life recovery, the increased accuracy, even this skill would be able to help you out against other light legendary monsters. So once again, my recommended skill set would be to run Ready to Hunt, Invisible Hunter, Hit and Kill, and then for that fourth and final skill, it's really only up to you to decide what works best for you. I imagine a lot of people will gravitate towards Fatal Ambush because it's always great for your attacker to have a strong AoE skill, but the one thing I'm going to beg people to consider is just imagine how this monster will play out in a Team Wars battle. So for example, imagine Team Wars involving Common, Light, and some other elements. After your Immobilizer immobilizes the enemy monster and then it's Taiga's turn, there's quite a few things you can do. You can start the game off with Ready to Hunt, which would help you set up for the next turn. Or you could do Fatal Ambush, and assuming it hits all targets, you'd be able to wipe out the enemy Common monster, you'd be able to damage the enemy Light monster and the other elements, and assuming that Common monster had Team Speed runes, you would decrease the overall speed of the enemy monsters. Or another thing you can do is just to start off the game with Hit and Kill. And considering this skill deals 70 damage, considering Taiga's power, and considering strength runes, this is going to one hit any enemy, whether it's the enemy's Light monster or the other elements, and obviously the Common monster would die from this skill. And from my personal experience, I would say it's better to take out one of the legendary monsters and just leave that Common alone. Yeah, that Common may have some Team Speed runes, and taking it out would reduce the overall speed of the enemy monsters, but by eliminating one of the legendary monsters, whether it be the Light monster, whether it be the other element, you've pretty much reduced a major threat to your team. That Common monster can honestly die really easily, maybe even your Deny monster can take it out, so it's not really much of a problem. So that's the thing you have to think about. Are you going to start the game off with Hit and Kill, or are you going to start a game with Fatal Ambush? Now if you're like me and most of the time you would start a game off with Hit and Kill, why not just think about the battle? Your enemy monster will only have a Common and some other elements, and in that situation, how good is an AoE? How good would Fatal Ambush be? A 45 damage skill with only a 90% accuracy, so there is a chance it could miss? I don't know, like I said, you have to decide for yourself what that fourth and final skill would be. And as for runes for Taiga, you would just go with the typical attacker rune setup, 2 strength runes and a speed rune. And with all that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Taiga. I hope everyone really enjoyed it. Taiga is certainly a top tier light attacker, and he might even be in the running for one of the top attackers in the whole entire game. How do you think Taiga compares to monsters like Lathe and Lao Lao? And how do you think Taiga compares to attackers from other elements? Let me know in the comments below. Also be sure to let me know what skill set do you plan to run on Taiga. And like always, also let me know what monster you want to see analyzed next. With that being said, I hope everyone has a great amazing day or a great amazing night. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.